Today on the podcast, I want to bring you a massive funding round alert. So Mistral AI, this is the French AI startup. It is making a ton of waves right now in the tech world with a recent close of a huge Series A funding round. So the company has recently raised 385 million euros. That's approximately $415 million. And this has catapulted its valuation to an impressive $2 billion, according to Bloomberg. So today on the podcast, I'm going to be breaking down what they plan on doing with that money, what they currently do, why they're in such a strong position. There's a lot of interesting regulation that has just come down the pipe in their neck of the woods. And I think this actually reflects why they're able to get this much money at such a great valuation. All of this plays into it. I'll be breaking it all down. Before we get into that, I wanted to respond to a comment by someone on our crowdfunding campaign on Republic for AI Box, which is our no-code AI app builder and marketplace we're currently raising funds for. And that is Christopher Peterson, who recently said, quote, "I've started listening to the 3 podcasts and your vision seems ahead of its time. Very impressive. I do have a question regarding the usability of what you're building, and I've already invested in thinking about more. One thing I've found irritating when trying to find information or build something and going to a site that has tons of options is that I don't even know where to start. Given the AI box will have hundreds or thousands of AI models available, are we offering some very basic, even wizard-like workflows so even my neighbor's dog would be able to build and monetize something?" So wanted to respond to Christopher here and say, first off, super happy you're enjoying the podcast. Second off, you absolutely are not alone in thinking that all of this can be very complex. There's thousands of AI models. New ones are coming out all the time. Open source ones are all over the place. AI Box will 100% give you some very simple tips on the best models to use for your tools. You'll be able to ask it and find that information very simply. And of course, there'll be defaults for different categories, image, text, video, etc. So, you can use the default models that will give you the most powerful options. Our mission really is to make sure virtually everyone, regardless of their technical expertise, can really easily navigate and create something powerful. So if you are interested in investing in this project, AI Box, you can go to republic.com/AI-box. I'll leave a link in the show notes, and you can join the over 260 people that have invested in our campaign, where we've now raised officially over $280,000. But let's get into the episode. Welcome to the world's #1 AI podcast, AI Chat. I'm your host, Jaden Schaefer. Make sure that you go to aibox.ai, link in the show notes, to join the waitlist for our new AI platform. We're going to be launching an incredible platform that allows you to build anything you want with workflows in AI. So you're able to chain together ChatGPT and image generators and audio generators to make really powerful apps for your organization, or you can host them on our marketplace and actually generate royalties from them. So make sure to go to aibox.ai and join the waitlist. In addition, if you like the podcast, if you could do me a massive favor and please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. This helps me be able to get better guests on here as they check the reviews to see how you guys are liking it. So if you could please do that, I would really, really appreciate it. Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? I record and publish podcasts on a platform called Spotify for Podcasters, and I absolutely love it. Essentially, you can upload from your phone or computer, and it distributes to every platform that plays podcasts. They support video podcasts, and you can make money on the platform with ads or even podcast subscriptions, something that has made my life so much easier as a podcaster. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you give it a try. You can download the Spotify for Podcast app or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your podcast today. So Mistral.ai, of course, they're sitting at $415 million in their bank account after their most recent $2 billion in funding. And this milestone also kind of coincides with the opening of their commercial platform, which I think is making a major step forward in the company's kind of growth trajectory. So this is what I've also noticed recently about Mistral AI is all of the new regulation for the EU AI Act kind of finalized, and Mistral was one of the players that was lobbying pretty heavily in that act, along with a handful of others. They got some special carve-outs for open source models. A lot of people were wondering how the AI Act was going to kind of address open source models. Mistral and I think Meta and a couple others that were doing these open source models got some special, essentially a little bit extra leniency for open source models and what they have to do. And so I think because of that, they have a strengthened position regulatory wise. And because of that, I think that kind of helped them to be able to secure this funding and make sure that, they're seen in a very strong light. And I think I'll list off a lot of their investors, but you'll notice a lot of these investors are American companies. And I bet you anything, these American companies are interested and in talks with Mistral AI, but are like, hey, there's a lot of regulation coming out of Europe. Are they going to just like shut you down and stifle you? Or are you going to be able to, essentially be successful? And Mistral's like, no, we got this. We got people on the inside. And I think when this new regulation came through and it was like, oh my gosh, there really is carve-outs for people like Mistral AI. I think a lot of these American venture capital funds are like, okay, they do have people on the inside. Let's move forward with this. And so then they were able to, pull in this $415 million. So Mistral AI is a really promising European contender essentially to OpenAI. It was co-founded by some veterans from DeepMind and Meta. And the startup focuses on essentially developing foundational models with a unique twist. So an open and decentralized approach to technology. So the strategy essentially has attracted a bunch of these different investors, like I mentioned. They have A16Z, they have Lightspeed Venture Partners, Salesforce, BNP Paribas, the bank, and CMA CGM, General Catalyst, Elad Gil, and Conviction. So Arthur Mencher, Mistral AI's co-founder and CEO, emphasized the company's vision in a statement. He said, quote, "Since the creation of Mistral AI in May, we've been pursuing a clear trajectory, that of creating a European champion with a global vocation in generating artificial intelligence based on an open, responsible, and decentralized approach to technology." So Mistral AI's first model, which is Mistral 7B, was unveiled back in September. And this large language model trained on, I think it had around 7 billion tokens, but it is not intended to directly compete with, like GPT-4 or Claude 2 or something like that. Instead, they took a bit of a different approach by making it freely downloadable. Like anyone can get this, and allowing developers to run it on their own devices and servers. So the model, released under the Apache 2.0 open source license, was developed using a proprietary data set. So I think apart from its tech advancements, Mistral has been actively involved in shaping EU's AI Act. Like I mentioned, the startup has lobbied for exemptions for foundational models, and they were really just kind of arguing that regulations should focus on the applications and products that directly impact end users, and not really the models, right? Because at the end of the day, if their AI model is going to get put into use, right? Like let's say they make a model, they open source this thing, a company takes it, integrates it into their platform. They're saying that company should be regulated. That company should be, liable and that's the one that you should focus on, and not the people making these open source models. And it would appear that the EU legislation kind of went along with that. So recent political agreements within the EU have introduced transparency requirements and technical documentation sharing for companies working on foundational models. And Mistral AI's strategy for monetization, I think, in all of this really kind of hinges on its developer platform, which I think it just entered beta. That's obviously not like this thing started this year, right? So this is very new. But the platform is going to enable other companies to access Mistral AI's models via an API. So in addition to the Mistral 7B model, developers can now use the new Mistral 8x7B model, which employs a router network for efficient parameter utilization. And this model has, I think, 45 billion total parameters, but it only uses I think it only uses 12 billion tokens. And so that, I think, is maintaining cost and speed efficiency. And then like its predecessor, it's also available on the Apache 2.0 license. So Mistral, in addition to all of this, Mistral has also introduced a third model, which is Mistral Medium, which reportedly outperforms its other offerings, which I thought was funny since its name's Medium. You'd think it's kind of the mid-level, but no, this is the one that's leading the way. This model is exclusively available through their paid API platform, so there's no download option provided. This makes a lot of sense, right? Obviously, they can't make everything they do open source. They got to make money from some of it, so I'm not hating on them for that in any way, shape, or form. I'm impressed with the company, and I'm, grateful for what they've done for open source to this point. Mistral AI's funding round, which I think is very impressive, and also the launch of its commercial platform, I think really signal a big leap in the AI landscape, especially in Europe, right? We're seeing a lot of AI companies come out of the US all year long. Europe has a handful, and I think this is really good news for the continent. But all that being said, I think Mistral AI or Mistral AI, I think this is a really big player in the AI space. This is going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. They obviously have the policy and the lobbying muscle required to make it in Europe. And I'm really excited to see how they grow and spread throughout the world. This is an interesting company, and I love the open source focus that they have. Thank you for listening to the AI Chat Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, I'd appreciate it if you rate me wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're looking for an innovative group of AI enthusiasts, make sure you check out our Discord channel and also our Facebook community. It's obviously a lot more interactive than a podcast, where we can actually share software tools, prompts that we're using in everyday AI. I'll leave a link for those in the description below.